Major breaking news. President Donald J. Trump himself has just reaffirmed in a huge public way his support of and desire to continue to push the Second Amendment's right to keep and bear arms, including with allowing people to carry guns all across this great country, including, but not limited to, Washington, D.C. You're not going to want to miss this powerful clip by President Trump when we come back. Hey folks, I'm Mark Smith, host of the Four Boxes Diner, proud American gun owner, constitutional attorney, member of the United States Supreme Court Bar, and I'm proud to say the top voice of the Second Amendment in America. Thank you, 2025 Gundies Awards. All right, folks, so a huge statement, which we're going to play for you in just a second, by President Donald J. Trump, talking about the importance of carrying guns for self-defense by law-abiding Americans and the importance of the Second Amendment's right to keep and bear arms. Very powerful statement. It reaffirms what I've always known, and most of you have known out there as well, although I know there's some naysayers out there that have to have their rolls slowed sometimes, whether for clicks or other reasons, when it comes to attacking Donald Trump. But that is not appropriate when it comes to our Second Amendment rights, because he is the most pro-Second Amendment president we have literally ever had in this great country. That's just the reality of it. So the supposed issue is that Donald Trump is deploying the ATF and other people onto the streets of Washington, D.C., which is, generally speaking, as I've explained before, and you know, is really a cesspool built on top of a swamp. But the good news is Donald Trump is given the authority for the local police departments and federal law enforcement to go out there on the streets and to clean up the bad areas, take the graffiti off the walls, get rid of the homelessness encampments, get rid of all this nonsense and crap that's on the streets of D.C. that makes our nation's capital look foolish. Clean all of that up, which I totally support. But there's been some concern among some members, I would say the distinct minority, but some members in the Second Amendment community are raising concerns about Trump using law enforcement to clean up D.C., and somehow this is anti-gun. And part of that, I think, stems from some language that, the United States Attorney for the District of Columbia, Jeanine Pirro, has occasionally used, where she talks about crime statistics since of this D.C. takeover, where she points out the number of people that have been arrested, the fact that there hasn't been a murder in 8 days since this began, and then she uses the phrase illegal guns. Now, we at the Four Boxes Diner and in the Second Amendment community, we understand that illegal guns is a term that's fraught with sort of negative meaning in the Second Amendment space, and I generally agree with that. But the harsh reality, or the reality, is this, folks. When Jeanine Pirro talks about illegal guns, what she's really saying in a short-handed kind of way, and maybe she needs to clean that language up, maybe she should. Maybe she should clean the language up a little bit. But what she's talking about is something that we all can agree to. And that is this. She is talking about guns in the possession of individuals who are career felons. She is talking about those people who are prohibited persons under federal law 18 U.S.C. 922 G1, where if you've been convicted of a felony, you cannot possess firearms. And in the case of who's being arrested in D.C., inevitably, these are individuals that are part of gangs and violent activity. These are not people like Martha Stewart that lie to the FBI in some interview about a stock trade and thus lost her rights by virtue of a nonviolent felony. These are not people that committed food stamp fraud 30 years ago. These are not people that engaged in stock trading problems with insider trading or whatever it might be. The people that Jeanine Pirro was talking about when she says the illegal guns are being taken off the street, these guns are being taken off the street removed from people that are criminals. In most instances, gang-related. Okay, that is the reality of it. But nevertheless, some people are trying to say, well, no, these are people that should have their guns. They should not have their guns removed. We should not be supporting this Trump effort. And I say hooey to all that, as does President Trump, because President Trump just reaffirmed just now his strong support for the Second Amendment and his strong support for allowing all law-abiding Americans to carry guns all across this great country, including in Washington, D.C. itself. Let's take a look at what President Trump just said, reaffirming the importance of the Second Amendment and the realities, the practical realities of having a gun to defend yourself in America. Check it out.
My second question is on crime prevention. Would you be open to expanding the national concealed carry to apply to D.C. like it does in other states like Texas?
Yeah. Well, they have it in some states and they feel strongly about it. As you know, I'm in favor of it. People have to protect themselves. I'm a Second Amendment person, very simply. People have to be able to protect themselves. Especially like in Washington, you walk down the street, a guy comes up and slugs you. He's got a pistol in his hand. You can be tough, you can be in great shape, you can be a powerful person, or you can be a guy that weighs 100 pounds with a gun in your hand.
Right.
And I'll bet on the guy with a gun 100% of the time, right? And so you need protection. So I'm a Second Amendment person all the way. Yeah, please.
And President Trump is absolutely right. And this is entirely consistent with what he has always said, going all the way back to 2015, 2016, when I was a media surrogate in the media on behalf of President Trump, at the time candidate Trump, part of the presidential transition team, and all of the above. Okay? Now, is there comments that he's occasionally made? Rarely, a little bit off base? Very, very, very rarely, and certainly nothing that we've seen in many, many years. Okay? Remember, Donald Trump himself had a concealed carry license in the city of New York long before he was anywhere close to politics. His sons are very involved in shooting sports. His son, Donald Trump Jr., is an owner and manager of a publicly traded gun-related company. So for people to say that the Trump administration is somehow bad on guns or doing things that are anti-Second Amendment is simply nonsense. And you should not generally be saying that. Now, with that said, that doesn't mean you should not be identifying specific issues that perhaps the Trump administration is making a mistake on, they're taking the wrong legal position. That is totally fair game. So if you see something that the position is wrong, you should flag that particular position, that particular argument, that particular action, and say, this is wrong. And I've done it, and I encourage you to do it too. But just be careful and don't get over the top hyperbolic about it, right? It's like my criticisms I talk about Amy Coney Barrett. You can criticize opinions and statements and arguments made by the Supreme Court justices. Just don't take it to such a level where you look like you're incredible. You look like you're a clown. You look like you can't be taken seriously. You look like someone who just wants to engage in clickbait on the internet. Don't go that far because you don't need to make your points. And I want to make sure that everyone that watches this channel and learns from the Four Boxes Diner is sufficiently sophisticated and credible so you can talk to people, whether it be politicians or regulators or friends or buddies at the gun club, whatever it might be. Okay? I want you to be credible, and I don't want you to make overstatements and engage in too much hyperbole, because then it kills your credibility and no one will listen to you on the points that really count. And that's why I just want you to make the arguments, but don't go too far. So Donald Trump is trying to clean up Washington, D.C., which he absolutely should be doing. And as a reminder, we in the Second Amendment community do not want psychopathic, violent gangbangers, terrorists, cartel members to get access to guns if we can stop it. Because it is these exact same psychopathic nut jobs or violent thugs who are the greatest risk to our Second Amendment rights. Because it is these psychos and nut jobs, terrorist and cartel members and the like, that go out into our communities and shoot up a school or kill people or do all sorts of terrible things, which is just terrible for society as a matter of morality and goodness. We don't want that in our society. We don't want bad people doing bad things. That's why we have prisons for criminals and mental institutions, which Donald Trump is bringing back for psychopathic nut jobs, like Michael Myers in the Halloween movies, right? We don't want them to be out on the streets with weapons. We don't want them to be out on the streets. It's bad for society. But beyond that, as a more practical effect of their terrible misuse of firearms and weapons and bad behavior, the consequence of that politically is that the only arguments that the the anti-gunners have, is that they point to these shootings, these terrible tragedies, which they are, and talk about the misuse of guns. And that is how they used to take away our Second Amendment rights. So, for example, today, the United States Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit in New York City dealing with the so-called assault weapon ban in Connecticut. We'll do a video on this entire opinion, but the only point I want to make about this is if you look at that opinion today that said that the Connecticut assault weapon ban was constitutional under the Second Amendment in all respects, they talk about the Sandy Hook shooting by that psychopathic nutjob Adam Lanza throughout the opinion. They focus on the misuse of guns and use that as the excuse, the pretext, to take away the rights, the fundamental rights of Americans to keep and bear arms. So we want Washington, D.C. cleaned up. We want the scumbags off the street. We want the psychopaths put into mental institutions or locked up in prison, one or the other. They got to go. Because what they do is bad for society, and what they do risk our Second Amendment rights, because the anti-gunners use their misbehavior against us. But the good news is that Donald Trump recognizes this, as does the Second Amendment Task Force for the Trump administration, that has taken excellent positions across the board, including that suppressors are protected arms down there in the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit in the Peterson case, and that AR-15 semi-automatic rifles and magazines that hold more than 10 rounds are protected arms as well, as the Department of Justice under President Donald J. Trump and Attorney General Pam Bondi and head of civil rights Harmeet Dillon, exactly the arguments that they're taking and advancing in the United States Court of Appeals for the Seventh Circuit in Chicago, in, among other cases, the Barnett case. So all I'm saying, folks, is this. Donald Trump supports our right to keep and bear arms. So does Jeanine Pirro. So does Harmeet Dillon. So does Pam Bondi. So does this Trump administration. That doesn't mean that they get it right 100%. No one gets it right 100%. Even the Four Boxes Diner and Mark Smith doesn't get it right 100%. So it happens. People will make mistakes, but don't overshoot the mark and go crazy. So I just want you, as you track the story of Donald Trump cleaning up Washington, D.C., be smart. Don't be dumb about this. And the fact that Donald Trump was more than happy to come out in support of his Second Amendment rights and the right to carry guns and the right to protect yourself in Washington, D.C. and beyond is a reaffirmation, not just to we in the Second Amendment community, but a reaffirmation for his priorities for the entire federal government, including to those individuals that are working on cleaning up the crime in Washington, D.C. And Godspeed to their efforts all across the board. We don't want criminals running around with guns in Washington, D.C. There is no good that can come of it for any aspect of American life as I see it. So there you have it, folks. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. Make sure you follow me on X at 4boxedowner. Don't forget to subscribe both to YouTube and to Rumble, and I look forward to talking again real soon here at the Four Boxes Diner.
Orders up. Table 2A.